Now, Democratic Congressman and House Minority Whip Steny H of Maryland in a roundtable discussion with students about college affordability in light of student loan interest rates doubling at the beginning of the month. From the University of Maryland, this is about an hour.
Well, thank you for being here. First thing I thought we'd do is, I know you just introduced yourselves, but I'd like everybody, hi there.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. The lady with the money, huh? Or at least the advice of how to get the money. Sarah has been wonderful. She does a great job here at the university. Let me start by telling you, as some of you may know, before your parents were born, I was a student here at the University of Maryland. That's literally, I think, probably true, depending upon how late your parents had you in their life. I started here in 1957, and I'm still alive. How about that? Jeez. That's the good news. The news you're going to be hard to hear is that my first semester cost me $86 for 15 credits.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible? And frankly, Maryland College Park, I didn't start to concentrate until my second year here at Maryland. Sam's heard the story. And I did much better in high school than I did my first year in college. But in any event, you got into Maryland, University of Maryland, if you had a C average, graduated from a Maryland high school, and were a Maryland resident. You got in. No questions asked. And I came to Maryland. Now, I was a commuting student, obviously. This was just the cost, which was incredible. When I think of now the costs that are running college students in America and at state colleges. You know, state colleges were theoretically open to all and very affordable. We still have state colleges. They're open to all and very affordable, but they've gotten a lot more expensive. Not just relative to 50 years go by and things get more expensive, inflation, et cetera, but more expensive relative to even when I went to school in real terms. And it is very important that we keep college affordable, not for you, or for you, or for you. It is very important that we do so for America, because you and you and you will make a difference for America. And if we don't make sure that the best and brightest can get into school and can afford school. And yes, I went into public service shortly after I was elected to the state senate, as some of you know, 5 months out of Georgetown Law School. And I graduated from Georgetown 3 years after I graduated from Maryland, so it was a pretty quick transition. Very frankly, and I practiced law, but I didn't carry a great debt, and Georgetown was more expensive than Maryland. And I took out what was called a National Defense Education Act loan. I can remember being in Hillcrest Heights. None of you know where Hillcrest Heights is, but it's about half an hour from here. It's just my neighborhood where I lived. September of 1957. And I was listening to my radio in a 1949 Dodge Coupe. The Russians have launched a vehicle they call Sputnik, and it is circling the globe. America was shocked. America was shocked that we were not first in space. And Dwight Eisenhower, the Republican president of the United States, said that's not acceptable. We need to make sure our young people can get into school and stay in school. And we adopted the National Defense Education Act. That's why it's called Defense Education Act, because it was perceived to be part of our national security that we make sure young people could get in school. I went to law school, not Maryland, because I was working at the CIA as a file clerk, 3:30 to 12 at night while I was going to school here. So I went here 6 years because I was only taking 11, 12 credits a semester because I was going to school essentially between 8 and 2, and then going to work. The debate that's going on in Washington today is about how we make college affordable and accessible to our best and brightest, and make sure they don't graduate from school so that they can't go into public service, so they can't take a job there, so they can't be teachers. Somebody can leave school carrying a $65,000, $75,000, $85,000, $95,000 debt load, is thinking to themselves, how can I earn enough money? Now, we've tried to work on that by limiting the percentage of income that one would pay back on a loan. But we've just had a debate, and I wanted to talk to you about it. And I want to talk to you particularly about your situation, because although we talk a lot in the abstract, ultimately the policies that we adopt are discrete in their impact on individuals. They affect people personally. It's hard to think in those terms unless you talk to them and say, look, this is what's going to happen to me. So I thank you for being here to discuss this with me a little bit. As you know, we're having a debate in Washington as to how we structure the various loans that we have, whether we cap interest rates, whether we let them float, whether we cap them at the time you take the loan but have them market-based before that. There are all sorts of different alternatives. And obviously, consumers are for the lowest possible interest rates, right? I mean, that's a no-brainer. All of us are for the lowest possible interest rates, which is why a lot of us who own homes have refinanced them over the last 5 years, because we got the interest rates kept going down. So I wanted to hear from you, and the first thing we'll do is start and just go around. Sarah's already, I've sort of introduced Sarah, but Sarah, why don't you start, and we'll go right around the room.
I'm Sarah Bowder. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Financial Aid here at the University of Maryland.
My name is Eric Adams, a rising senior double in communications to New York.
My name is Allison Thompson. I am a rising junior aerospace engineering student.
And where are you from?
Chicago, Illinois.
Chicago. And where are you from?
I'm from Maryland.
Maryland. Where?
Cecil County.
Cecil County, right, okay.
I'm from Annapolis, Maryland. My name is Aditya Dilip, and I'll be a junior this fall, majoring in government and politics.
I'm from Severn, Maryland. My name is Andrew Agabao, and I'm a rising senior government and politics major.
Where in Southern Maryland?
Severn, Maryland.
Oh, Severn.
Severn,
Sorry, I
Maryland,
thought
yeah.
you said Severn, Maryland. And Arundel.
My name is Patrick Gronk. I'm a rising sophomore government and politics major. I'm from Bridgewater, New Jersey, and I now live in Bel Air, Maryland.
Great.
Howdy, my name is Mark Rivetta. I'm a second-year PhD student here at the University of Maryland.
I'm from Flemington, New Jersey, and I'm serving as the student body president here.
The president, I call her, personally.
I'm from Flemington, New Jersey as well. My name is Amy Waterhouse, and I'm a rising senior Arabic and French double major.
Wonderful.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Cromer. I'm also a second-year graduate student in the medical anthropology department. I'm a graduate of St. Mary's College of Maryland, and I'm from Baltimore.
Wonderful. Do you know Marielle?
Yes, I do.
All right.
My name is Alexis Wodowitz. I'm from East Brunswick, New Jersey, and I am a rising senior art history major.
Hi, Brandon Levy. I graduated a year ago with a degree in history. I'm from Baltimore, and now I work for the Criminal Justice Policy Foundation.
Wonderful. Well, I want to, again, thank all of you. I know, Sam, you spent some effort in trying to encourage people to participate, and I appreciate your participating. What I would like to do, and now I have Tom, where are you? Tom Moore is my policy director. He's a bigwig. He's worked on the Hill for many years. He worked for a United States Senator and was his legislative director for 18 years. I'm lucky enough to now have him with me as Senator retired. And the reason I introduce him to you and you to him is because he's in charge of this issue. So he's here to listen and to learn. Why don't you come up to the table here? And Tom Notter is also with me. He runs my congressional office. Marielle Size, who's my communications director, is here and went to St. Mary's College. St. Mary's College. Kirsten. No. Kirsten Alexis, right? Caitlin, okay. Kirsten, where's Kirsten? Oh, okay. Okay, I knew I met a Kirsten. And Betsy Bossert is my district director. She runs my district shopping. Okay, what I want to hear from you and what Tom wants to hear from you, because it makes a difference in the debate and the consideration. You sit around writing a bill, like I say, you're not necessarily thinking of, you know, Alexis or Sam or one of you. You're thinking, what is this policy going to mean? But ultimately, policy means something to somebody in some circumstance. We want to hear that. Oh, I didn't know that. How are you? Come on up. Have a seat. Do we have enough seats? We have enough seats. If we don't, we'll move some up. The Bowie Bulldogs are here. There you go. Why don't you move a chair right in here? Move a chair right in. Okay. You got room here.
Everybody else stands in.
All right. Does everybody know Dr. Grad, by the way? She makes sure that I do the right thing. Okay. Who wants to be first in telling me what your situation is and what your challenges are and why it's important to you? As you know, we have a bill in, some of us, that freezes for at least a year, maybe even 2 years, the 3.4% on the subsidized loans, Stafford loans, for another year, which we did also last year, as some of you probably know. There are other proposals, once we pass on the House, which has a floating market value, and it continues to float even after you take the loan. So unlike a house loan that I take out and I have a fixed rate mortgage, this would not be fixed rate. It would float based upon the market. So the problem with that is you wouldn't know. The President has a market rate for the establishment of your rate, but then frozen from the time that you take it. Now, there are some other nuances, but that's the major one. So I know you've been talking about this. I know this is important for your education. I know I couldn't have completed Georgetown without my NDA loan. Now, it's going to hurt you also. I think I borrowed $1,000. That was for 2 years. I think it was $500 a semester, but I was working so I could meet some of the costs myself. So I borrowed $500 one year, $500 the next year. I didn't borrow the first year. And so I ended up with $1,000. It was the best loan I ever had. I paid it back in 10 years. You know, imagine that. I can't remember what I paid. It must have been minuscule, though. So, again, this is not so much for you. I want to make that point, and people watching. It is for our country. It is so critical that you young people be given the best education we can give you, bright minds developed to contribute to our country. So this is about investing, not just paying. Okay, who's got a thought? Who's got a challenge? Who's got, I know some of you do because I've read some of your resumes. Go.
Congressman, I have a question. I'm currently now part of the currently a grad student, but I went to Georgetown previously for my master's. And while there, I first encountered the fact that grad students cannot or do not have access to subsidized Stafford loans.
Right.
And I was wondering, what is the reasoning behind that? I mean, if we are truly concerned about America's future, and most degrees now, you can't just stop at a degree. You have to go to grad school to really excel in any particular career or field. So I'm wondering, why is that not available to us as an option?
Well, even today, you know, Bill Gates is not sure that that's correct. Zuckerberg's probably not sure that's correct either. But as a general rule, you're correct. Now, we deal in a world of alternatives. There are X number of dollars available, and the Congress made a judgment that getting an undergraduate degree was the priority. If you have more resources, you can subsidize more loans, but that was the priority. So I think that's essentially a shorthand answer. There are other, but the shorthand answer is it was the most efficient use of resources to ensure the undergraduate degree, feeling that the graduate degree, while loans are available, I got an NDA loan, and while loans are available, They're not subsidized loans on the theory that the graduates were going to make more money as they go up the educational ladder. Everybody knows if you don't graduate from high school, your chances of making a decent wage are very substantially reduced. If you graduate from high school, you're going to do better. If you get a 4-year, or you go some college, community college, you go to community college, you're going to do better, da-da-da-da-da-da, as you point out, up the chain. But that's the reason, that there was a sense that, and let me sort of key off that something I didn't say. I believe, because this is in the best interest of the country, that we ought not to look at student loans as a deficit reducer. It ought to be neutral. That is to say, at worst, we ought not to lose any money, or at worst, we ought not to make any money, at best. So it ought to be neutral. In other words, and the reason for that is we ought not to be asking students to subsidize the deficit, none of which essentially they incurred, my generation and other generations incurred those deficits. And because we want to encourage you to go to school, we ought to make it as affordable as possible. And reducing the deficit ought not to be your responsibility. It ought to be my generation's and your parents' generation to do so. And that's one of the debates, by the way, as to whether the president wants a neutral, the Democrats want a neutral, the Republicans have a bill that is $4 or $5 billion in deficit reduction, I think.
Well, even if somebody's goal was to reduce the deficit with student loans, you'd only be putting a bandage on a larger problem. I'm a graduate student, but a lot of my friends have gone out into the working world, and I have friends who pay more in loans than their rent, and friends who can't buy a house or can't rent and live with their parents, and can't buy new cars. So really, you're just creating a generation of adults who can't put any money into anything really but their student loans. So in the long run, you're only hurting the economy by freeing up.
Good point.
By freeing up money that young adults today actually put towards their student debts. You have people that are now able to put money towards a down payment on a house, towards a new car, towards supporting, local businesses, supporting any business. So that's my take on it.
I think that's an excellent point. To the extent that we put some of our most capable people deeply in debt, in an economy that's 70% driven by consumer spending, we undermine not only their lives and their ability to purchase cars, houses, necessities, have children, we diminish our ability to grow our economy. You're absolutely right. Good point.
And you're also putting undue strain on the parents of those people and the grandparents of those people. So really, you're not only crippling one generation, you're crippling several.
You're right. I agree with it. Good point. Glad you made it.
So
excuse me.
I'm working now. I graduated a year ago, and I just wanted to speak to the fixed rate. You mentioned it's really important for me to have a fixed rate. I know that every single month I'm going to pay $760 in students, which obviously is a sizable part of my income. And as you were saying, that definitely does make it more difficult to buy a car, buy a house. That is more than my rent. I'm living in D.C., and if I didn't have a fixed rate, if I didn't know every month as to how much I would have to pay, I know that would just be so much more stressful, so much harder. I'd probably, not be able to live where I'm living now just because I wouldn't know if month to month whether or not I could afford it. So I think it's really important that we adopt a fixed rate as we've had in the past and not something that's just variable based on conditions that are largely out of my control.
I agree with you 100%, and the President does too, on a fixed rate. It's a question of what rate you use, obviously, and when you take it out. But once you take it out, you need to have again, my mortgage is a fixed rate mortgage. I know what I'm going to pay from now until I satisfy it. And I have that confidence that I got to set aside this much money every month to pay my mortgage. Absolutely right.
So I have a question for you.
Sure.
What do you think, what's your crystal ball in terms of, once everybody comes back from recess, that they're going to come to a resolution that's going to be retroactive? It seems that they're so close. They're splitting hairs right now, and it seems to me everyone's kind of on the same page. It's just they ran out of time before the recess.
I think you're right. I think it will be retroactive.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we'll take something that's not retroactive, and hopefully we'll resolve it between now and, Tom, when do we get out? August 2nd, 3rd? Yeah. I think it's August 3rd. whatever that Friday is, the first Friday in August we get out. But I think it'll be retroactive. So in other words, although everybody said, the deadline, June 30th, July 1st, rates are going to go up from 3.4 to 6.8 on the subsidized Stafford, and that's true, but I think we'll roll it back because there's no intent in Congress, whoever you are, Republican, Democrat, that we not address it as of July 1st.
Good.
Yeah. I can't imagine we wouldn't make it retroactive.
Yeah, that's
Yes, sir. Bowie.
Yes, name actually, but my name is Rihanna Sammy from Bowie State University, a rising junior. I'm criminal justice major with a minor in pathology or child and adolescent studies. You asked for a more personal opinion. You want to know how it affects us directly. I could just basically give you a background and you can pretty much sum up how it would affect me. Both my parents are ill. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. My mom has heart problems. My father was just diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So financial aid, the loans, that's pretty much what put me through college. I am the youngest of 12. My parents have put 6 kids through college, and now I have to pretty much find a way to make it for myself, whether that be scholarships, which come rare typically. Out of high school into college, the transition, just like you, my grades in high school were much better than my grades in college, but I think I do pretty well. But the loans themselves, my parents are back in New Orleans, so once I graduate college within a year, I will have to make do. So trying to find an apartment or a car to be able to have a job, or just enough money to have an apartment and metro access would be difficult, having to pay back the student loans. So I just wanted to just give you that little tidbit of my life.
Let me ask you something. Do you have a student loan now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you had a student loan every semester?
Yes.
Okay.
Every semester.
What, if you don't mind saying, what approximately do you think at the end of you're a junior, rising junior, or?
Yes.
So you got another 2 years to go, another 4 semesters. What do you estimate your debt will be when you graduate?
Probably around. I take out about $3,000
a semester.
Yeah, just to cover.
So 6 a year. So you're talking about another 12.
Yeah, pretty much. So 12,
24,
$25,000
$25,000
by my senior once I graduate.
Yeah.
So you all can pretty much see how that would in turn affect me once I graduate. So many students like me, we would rather try to either stay in school. I'm going to graduate. I'm not going to try to stay in school at all, but I know a lot of students who would rather try to take an extra year or take some more classes just so they'll have enough time to be able to produce enough revenue to try and even live at sea level versus below it. So,
good for you. Now, what are you studying?
Criminal justice.
Oh, you said that. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Well, Bowie is one of the more affordable colleges that we have, and you get a very good education at Bowie, and it's affordable. But affordable is in the eye of the beholder, or perhaps in the thickness of the wallet. You got to have it to be able to expend it, even if it's a low number.
Right.
$86. I made, I think, like my first job, like maybe $60 a week. I mean, put it in constant. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tyreek Simmons, also from Bowie State University, a psychology major and also a rising junior.
Where are you from?
Washington, D.C.
Right. Okay.
So for me, it's a little bit different. I wholeheartedly support the idea of fixed rates simply because I'm an out-of-state student at Bowie State University. So, and I'm also an on-campus resident. I don't have the means to commute. So I pay about maybe $13,000 a semester to attend. So, like you said, it is affordable, but it is much more affordable for people who are in-state. I have taken loans out since my freshman year, and to have the idea of the interest rates fluctuating, it's a bit scary. My mother is also seeking a higher education, so she has her own loans to pay back herself. So with the idea of me having loans to pay back once I graduate, and me possibly, like, this upcoming year will be much harder because I am only getting loans. I don't get the grant anymore. So to have that idea in mind, it feels like it's going to be a constant struggle for both my mother and I once I graduate from college. And it is a bit scary, so I wholeheartedly support the idea of fixed rates.
You know, one of the things I heard from both of you is that this is a family decision. And, you know, I've been in financial aid for 22 years, and you can see how the culture has changed over time, that the decision, even though it's called a student loan, it really actually is, you're basing your repayment based on your family circumstances. And it's a really interesting concept of how student loans is working today.
You're absolutely right. I don't think people really recognize that it is a family issue.
Yeah.
I'm sure you all know that when you get your student aid report, you get something that's called an EFC, your expected family contribution, and that's based upon your family salary. Now, that doesn't take into account all of the bills or extras that your family may have outside of that, so I definitely think you're absolutely right.
Yep.
I actually started paying my interest off in college, so that's definitely started to help me. I mean, I'm not complaining. I love my 2 jobs. I've met some great people. I learned a lot. It's just if the interest rate were to go up, it just make it a lot harder for me to be in school and graduate on time.
Right.
It also like changes what I want in my future. Like I don't know if I want to go to law school, grad school, you know, take a couple years off and work, and all that depends on the interest rate and how much I can take out in loans. I also work a lot with high schoolers. I spend my spring break in Philadelphia teaching a class of high school, and you know we were talking to them about college. This is an urban city school, and not a lot of them graduate and go to college. And we were talking about attending universities, and for them the main reason they don't attend universities is the cost. We always talk about financial aid and everything, and I feel that if we were to increase the loans, talented seniors, juniors wouldn't apply to Maryland, other schools in the state. I mean, we're increasing loans nationally, so even any school in the country, they wouldn't apply to because they don't think they'll be able to get the aid, or maybe they don't get enough aid. So that's something that, if you're talking about national defense, we're basically discouraging future generations from going to higher education.
Which is bad for the country. That was my point. I agree with you. Sam? Madam President?
I think it's important also to look at this conversation in the context of higher education. So right now we're just talking about the interest rates.
Right.
And Maryland has done a great job in keeping college affordable compared to many other states around the country. But, we're having this fight over interest rates, not even the actual, crux of keeping college affordable. And I think that what students are really looking for is a permanent deal. We fought this battle a year ago, and I was at the bill signing, a year ago. And we did all this a year ago, and, I think student advocates and people in Congress, want to move on, and, we want to work on youth unemployment and, actually keeping college affordable and those kinds of issues. So I think it's important for students to see a permanent deal, whatever, hopefully it's the one that we're looking for, but I don't think anybody wants to be at this table a year from now and the next year and the next year.
Sam, I think absolutely correct. Unfortunately, we've been doing too many things on a temporary, short-term basis. For instance, what we compensate doctors for medical care they give to Medicare people. We do it on an annual basis, called the sustainable growth rate. It ought to be permanent. We give a research and development tax credit to businesses for research and development to encourage them to develop new products and develop new ways of creating jobs and making money. That R&D credit is re-upped every year. None of that, and there are a lot of other things like that, none of that lead to confidence, that you can be confident, I know what my payment's going to be 2 years from now, so I can plan around that. Sam, you are absolutely right. We need to do this on a permanent basis. Frankly, I think all parties, I don't mean political parties, but all the people who are involved just want to do it on a permanent basis. for exactly the reasons you say. It's not a good solution to do it, because, okay, well, my interest rate's going to be 3.4%. So I can figure, talk with my family, this is what the deal is, and, oh, guess what? They just upped it to 6.8 or some other percentage that I don't know what's going to be this year or next year. So you're absolutely right.
Affect people who are paying loans. Permanence affects the decisions of family. I'm the oldest of 3. I have 2 degrees. My sister was really only able to afford her dream school because of a full athletic scholarship. And my little brother, who's 16, is a very talented student, is interested in engineering, and he doesn't know, what he's going to do without a scholarship, if he's going to be able to afford to go to a school with a good engineering problem and program that problem. That's a Freudian slip. But it affects the way that my family, uses their income on a daily basis. It affects the way that we make our decisions. It affects the way that he goes about school every day. I mean, not that, motivation to do extremely well is a bad thing, but the anxiety that accompanies a high schooler these days, will I be able to afford college? How hard am I going to have to work? Will I be able to afford, paying off my loans? It's too much for young people in the country to bear. They should be worried about what major they're going to, go into in school, or, what career they're interested in.
Let me, on my own experience, say this is not a new problem, however. The magnitude of it is new, but it's not a new problem. For instance, I got a $1,400 scholarship out of high school. I went to Suitland High School. Does anybody know where Suitland is? It's not too far from here. I graduated from Suitland High School, and I got a $1,400 scholarship to Lafayette University. Good school in Pennsylvania, and it required me to get another $1,800. It was $3,200 total. There was no way in the world I could get $1,800. So I went to work and went here because it was affordable, and I went to work starting the first year, 8 to 12, but then 3:30 to 12 at night, because my family had zero money. My family gave me zero money for college, not because they didn't want to; they didn't have any money. So they would have come up pretty well on the family contribution index, but I never did that index because I could afford a semester of working. I could get that money, but this is not a new problem. It's just the magnitude of it has gone up so much that while my problem was relatively solvable because there was an affordable alternative, now that's not necessarily the case.
Especially with more people going to college.
Yeah.
It's competitive. And Maryland is extremely competitive, not only because of its academics, but because of its affordability now. Mm-hmm. So students who otherwise would choose the school for affordability have to fight to get in as well.
No, it's very, very tough competition. I couldn't have gotten in Maryland. I had a 2.85 graduating high school. I couldn't have gotten in here. I graduated with high honors and was the outstanding graduating male. So it didn't predict. So I'm very empathetic to kids who didn't do particularly. It didn't predict what I was going to do. But I couldn't have gotten into Maryland today. No way. I would have gone maybe to another school, and maybe the second year it's a little easier to get in, as you know. But no way I could have gotten into Maryland the first year with the standards that now exist, where you have a 3.6 or 3.7. I don't know what you guys are all so smart, and your SATs were off the charts. I did all right in the SATs, but my grades weren't that great. Okay, who else wants to tell me what their thoughts are? I mean, you're the guys that are participating and looking at this. Right now, I have grandchildren, but they're not yet to where they're applying to college, and my children are already through college. Although Susan, my oldest daughter, went to the University of Richmond, which we believe it was far enough away that we wouldn't visit on a regular basis, and close enough if she got homesick she could come home, which is what the criteria there. But that was about $10,000 a year at that point in time, and that was in the 80s, late 80s. And we can see how it's escalated from there. I'm sure it's in the 40s right now, maybe more. Yeah.
So, like you said, you could have gone to a private university for more money, but you chose to go to University of Maryland because it was an affordable alternative.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
Well,
what
similar.
I said was it was the only alternative for me because I could not afford the other alternatives,
I was in a similar situation.
which happened to be one of the best decisions that was made for me.
I'm the youngest of four. My mom's a single mom. She put all of my siblings through college, actually. And when I was applying to schools, it was pretty apparent because she made it known to me that I will have loans pretty much wherever I go. But she kind of laid it out to me, it was funny, in an Excel spreadsheet of how much my loans would be if I chose to go to each college or these types of colleges. And I ended up applying to all state schools because I knew that I didn't want to have 6 figures of loans. And I ended up going to University of Maryland partially because of the in-state tuition, also because I fell in love with it, and I love my decision. But I was kind of educated right off the bat to know how much I would have in loans and how much I would have to pay when some of my peers, it was pretty clear, just people I talked to, they didn't really realize the decision they were making, and they got to go to their dream schools, which was fantastic, but then when they got out, they graduated with 6 figures in loans, and some of them were unemployed, and they just didn't necessarily know about the affordable alternatives, such as going to community college for 2 years or going to a public state school. I feel like we have a culture of not really educating our youth as much and just telling them, it sounds telling them you can go wherever you want and then having them be saddled with all this debt because they really didn't know what they were signing up for. And I just think that's, even like Sam said, we're talking about interest rates, but I think there's a larger problem here as well.
I think, Sam, and you are absolutely right. We are talking about a bigger problem. I serve on the Board of Trustees at St. Mary's College. I was on the Board of Regents for some period of time until I became majority leader and I came off. But St. Mary's College, we pride ourselves in being an affordable, quality institution. But we're having a struggle to keep it affordable, to keep prices down, to keep quality up and prices down. It's a problem for the entire higher education system in America. And we're going to have to grapple with it. So Sam's right. It's not just a, what are the interest rates going to be next year problem. It's a how we're going to make sure that all of you can afford to get in next year, the year after, or your successors.
Affordability.
And you're next.
I was, before coming to Maryland, I was an academic advisor at the University of District of Columbia, which is actually a very affordable institution, and we serve a lot of non-traditional and or first-generation students. But even for those students, when working with them and advising them on also financial aid, amongst many other things, they were very adverse to loans. And for many of them, the only way that they could attend was through Pell Grants. Now, is there any wherewithal in the House to increase the amount of Pell Grants? Because Pell Grants really, even at an affordable institution, a very affordable institution like UDC, they still couldn't manage to pay those extras, like the fees, like the books, like the Metro Transit. So I'm wondering, I think these two things go hand in hand to a certain degree, because it can't just necessarily be reducing or keeping the rate fixed for financial aid. We also have to look at Pell Grants as well.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. The good news is that we have Pell Grants and they're grants. The bad news is that right now the debate in Congress is about freezing dollars at 2008 levels. I don't know how many of your families think if they were making $2008 they could afford to live in 2013, 5 years later. Some of them are probably doing that, but they find it tougher and tougher every year. Most people are not living on the same income in 2008, and 5 years later in 2013, they're having to keep up with inflation, if nothing else. The debate we're having in Washington, however, is not about increasing Pell Grants. It's about cutting Pell Grants. In 09 and 10, we increased Pell Grants. Pell Grants, when they were adopted, Sarah, do you remember when they were adopted? Let's say 30 years ago for the sake of argument. 65. Was it 65? So it was longer ago than that. Replaced essentially 70 to 72%. Not replaced, but took care of. I was on the Labor Health Education Subcommittee for 23 years. it eroded over that period of time to where it was less than 30%, in the neighborhood of 30%. So half of the value. The dollars may have been incrementally a little bigger. We increased it significantly in 09 and 10, but it is now starting to wither away. Why? Because this number that we're marking to, in other words, how much money have we decided is available to spend and invest in discretionary spending, has been very substantially reduced. The Labor Health Education Bill is projected to be decreased. NIH, Centers for Disease Control, Pell Grants, other matters dealing with education and healthcare, is scheduled to be decreased by almost 25%, which will put it back at less than 2008 expenditures. The overall number is 2008, but what's happening is we are deciding to spend $54 billion, and take $1 trillion as discretionary spending. Discretionary spending is not Social Security, not Medicare, not, and if you take from $1 trillion, if you take $54 billion, let's say for the sake of argument, defense is about half, and defense a little more, discretionary is a little less, non-defense. But let's say it's half for the sake of argument. You take $54 billion from this side of the ledger, non-defense, and you put it on the defense side. That means you have $54 billion less, which is about a 10% cut, about a $500 billion in round terms. So that makes an adverse impact on the ability to keep Pell Grants not only from decreasing, and you don't have to decrease them in terms of dollar amount, but if you don't raise them, at least by inflation, you've increased the value of the Pell Grant. You understand that. So you're absolutely right. We need to increase the Pell Grants, again, not for you, for the country. If we're going to compete in the global marketplace, which we want to do, it will be because we educate our young people to be the kind of growing economy that we need to be to create the kinds of jobs we need, not only for all of you, but for the millions and millions of people who don't go to college, but who have skills and a wherewithal to work hard and be a welder. You know how much welders can make in America? $80 to $90 an hour. A master welder. Why? Because if you're going to make things in America, what do you need to do? You need to put them together. You need to join them. You know, there are all sorts of ways to do it. Now, of course, we have 3D printing, so, you know, maybe it'll all be done one stream. But you get my point. So Pell Grants are something that we ought to be increasing, not decreasing, because they're a way to give students who have got a lot of ability but not much means into college so we can use their talents. Yeah, Tom? Oh, I'm sorry. I said you were going to go to you next.
I think it's kind of interesting, the idea.
Sheryl Sandberg says, lean forward. No, I didn't mean it literally, but you know who Sheryl Sandberg is? President of Facebook, CEO of Facebook, and she wrote a book about leaning in.
Wow. My name is Amy Waterhouse. I'm an out-of-state student here in Maryland. I mean, just...
From New Jersey?
From New Jersey, yes.
Well, New Jersey is Maryland's a magnet for New Jersey.
We are.
When I was here, there were a lot of New Jersey students here. It's great.
It's the most densely populated state, or it's one of, like, top 5, so there are New Jersey students everywhere,
right, all
across the East Coast.
Yeah.
But what I think is really interesting about affordability, and you were talking about how, you know, you were able to make $86 in, you know, however, like a week and a half's worth of pay. And especially because Washington, D.C. is such a big hub for unpaid internships. I mean, I was reading something.
Well, I was thinking, just to clarify, that was when I was working full-time, 3:30 to 12. Half of that was probably $45, $40 a week, and then you take taxes out of that. So I was probably, at the time I paid that, probably making net $28, $30 a week. Yeah.
Okay, well, just
but still.
Well, because I personally, the idea that, like, Washington runs so much on unpaid internships and students, that it really is sort of creating this, like, this gap between socioeconomic classes where people that can afford to use unpaid internships are what Washington, D.C. especially is benefiting from. That's the way that they get so much of their work done. is creating these further divides for students where, I mean, I work a job, or during the school year, I work usually 2 jobs, and then I'm taking credits and doing an internship. Right now, between my internship and my paid job, I'm working about 65 hours a week, but only getting paid for half of that. So I'm making a little bit less than minimum wage per hour that I'm working. And this is, by the way, no way with this am I covering what I'm paying for the tuition every year. I have 2 younger sisters. One of them goes to University of Delaware, and she was lucky enough that she was brilliant enough to do this program in high school where she graduated high school with her associate's degree and her high school degree, or her high school diploma. And because of that, she's able to graduate with less debt because she can do like only 2 years of regular college. But my parents have sort of been trying to encourage her to do all 4 years because, different experiences, whatever, but she literally can't afford it because of the loans that she would have to take out for college.
Which leads to the broader discussion Sam's talking about.
Yeah.
Why 4 years? Have you thought about it? I mean, is 4 years the magic number? Is 5 years the magic number? Is 3 years the magic number? That's part of the larger discussion of what are we talking about in terms of higher education. I went 9 years because I did part-time for a long time, and I did terribly my first year. But that's a lot of schooling. So I was 26 by the time I got out. Just turned 27 shortly after I graduated. But a lot of countries have 3 years of higher education. And then a transition to maybe the last year, the third year being partially law school or medical school or something like that. We have 4 years of medical school, which adds to the expense. Sam's saying what we need is a larger discussion of how long is enough, what do you need, how much should it cost, a lot of big issues that we need to discuss, and you put your finger on it. I didn't know of the Delaware program, but that's a fantastic program. I don't think we have such a program in Maryland. That's what I meant.
Through our high school, right?
But I said Delaware, but I knew you came from New Jersey, but you used it Delaware. I think we're going to have to be thinking along those lines, where there are clearly some people who can take a first year of college in their junior and or senior year because they're gifted. And we ought to take advantage of that, again, to save them money, but also to save us money and to have them in the stream sooner. Anybody know Freeman Habrowski? Do you know who he is? Yeah. He graduated college at 19. Now, he's particularly gifted. He's the president of UMBC. I mean, he's a math genius. But having said that, think of how much money he saved.
I know that Governor O'Malley is interested in looking at programs like what Amy's sister did, and kind of doing a lot of course redesign and figuring out ways that we can cut costs here on the university level, and get kids out quicker. So, we're not only saving ourselves money, but all the taxpayers, especially with in-state tuition. We're talking about, we're subsidizing everybody's education, so we can have a better workforce. So, I think that we're looking at that here, but making sure that we're being supported on the national level,
One of the things, of course, we have to do, this gets away from we accelerate people getting out of school, got to have a job. One of our principal objectives in America is to create jobs, grow the economy faster. I have a Make It in America agenda that I talk a lot about, which is in the manufacturing field, but if you grow manufacturing jobs, you grow jobs in every sector of our economy. As a result, we really do need to focus on that. We're not focusing on it as much as we ought to be, but we ought to be doing that so that when you get an accelerated education, there is a place to use your talents. Now, your sister, for instance, who you say is brilliant, and I'm sure you're brilliant as well, Amy, but she'll have some place to use her brilliance and make things happen. Somebody else had a hand up? What's our time frame, Tom, Betsy? We need it. Okay, it's 4:30 now, so we got to wrap up. Look, Sam obviously is the president of the SGA here, and who's somebody who had an unpaid internship in my office. And that's a really good point about these unpaid internships. It's a little bit like the volunteer army. Get the connection there, you know. From an economic standpoint, we have an army that's not nearly as diverse as it used to be. When I came here to the University of Maryland, ROTC mandatory. There are 4,000 male students, not female students, 4,000 male students in ROTC here at Maryland. It was mandatory. And that was part of the reason I think costs were deferred. You know, that kept costs down because the federal government participated. And why? Because it was useful for the country. But you make a very good point on the time we ought to look at that, which is not necessarily involved with student loans, but on the ability to take an internship, which is a very good credential and experience. I think Sam would tell you, you know, although interns do, and as you pointed out, critically important work, it may not. I was essentially an intern when I started working on Capitol Hill, when I was a senior here. I didn't do fancy work. I wasn't writing great reports or great speeches, but I was being exposed to something that was obviously very helpful to me through the years. And if you can't afford to take a non-paying internship and devote, Sam, how many hours a week, 10, 12?
I was there over winter break, so I was doing 4 days a week.
Yeah, you worked, during the winter break full time. But, you know, some people can't afford to do that, obviously, and you're right. We need to think about that. Now, what's the option? Paying interns. What's the problem there? Cost. All the discussion in Washington is not about increasing but decreasing costs. We need a big deal, by the way. We need a big balanced deal, a la Simpson Bowles, Domenici Rivlin, Gang of Six, you name it. We need a big deal. That doesn't mean you have to agree with every point in either one of those recommendations, but we need to get our country on a fiscally sustainable path with certainty so that you know from year to year what the tax rate's going to be, what the regs are going to be, what our budget's going to be, et cetera. This uncertainty is hurting the country. And this is just one facet of that, and not the big picture, as Sam says. I want to thank all of you for what you do every day with your peers at Bowie, at Maryland, and for what you're doing for your country in terms of making yourself more able to contribute and participate in a productive way in the life of our country. I really mean that very sincerely. You know, I almost flunked out of Maryland, and I found out if you open the book, it makes a difference. I really did. But you got to work at it. You know, I didn't work very hard in high school. You know, I was okay, you know, but I didn't work very hard. When I came here, I didn't work. I worked less. And then it dawned on me as in my second semester of what would have been my sophomore year, you know, Hoyer, if you don't get your act together, you're going to be digging ditches. Now, we need ditches dug, understand. I don't criticize people digging ditches. I just didn't want to be a ditch digger. So I got my acting gear. But you have your acting gear now. You're obviously outstanding students. So thank you very much for doing that. Sarah, I want to thank you. Sarah has been here for some period of time. She and I have done a lot of work together through the years. She's been very helpful to our office. She's been very helpful to a lot of our students that we've recommended, but she's extraordinarily conscientious and focused on helping young people get a good education. And Sarah, thank you very much for all you do. I appreciate it. And I appreciate, Sam, your efforts helping us to get this group of extraordinary people together. And we will take your comments. We've been writing notes down, and we'll enter those into the debate. As I said, I'm hopeful that we will resolve this particular small issue. I think Sam is so insightful in saying, look, this is, you know, just a facet of a problem of higher education costs. That's the big problem. It's like health care. You know, Medicare and Medicaid, everybody says you got to deal with them. If health care costs were contained, they'd be fine. But they're not contained, and government's 50% of the payer of health care costs. So we need to deal with that. Thank you all. Best of luck to you. And if we can help in any way, give us a holler. Okay? Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Ray, thank you.